It all started with a chair. Not just any chair, mind you. It was the Epirus of outdoor seating, a dark gray wicker throne from which I, Leo Maxwell, would survey my tiny kingdom of freshly laid sod and fledgling rose bushes. I'd just hit the suburban jackpot, or so I thought. After 15 years of designing aircraft interiors in a cubicle that had less square footage than a 737 lavatory, and living in an apartment where my downstairs neighbor communicated exclusively by banging a broom handle on his ceiling, this was the promised land, a real-life, honest-to-God backyard in a place called Serenity Meadows. A name like Serenity Meadows should have been my first red flag. It's the kind of name dreamed up by a marketing committee that thinks tranquility can be achieved with restrictive covenants and a color palette limited to 6 shades of beige. But my partner, Sarah, and I were blinded by the vision. A 2-car garage, a kitchen with an island, and a patch of grass big enough to get a decent running start before you hit the fence. We were officially adults, with a capital A, the kind who discuss property taxes and the optimal pH for growing hydrangeas. That first Saturday morning was pure, unadulterated bliss. The sun was warming the patio stones, the air smelled of cut grass and chlorine from a distant pool, and the coffee in my mug was strong enough to jumpstart a gypsy major engine. I leaned back in my new wicker chair, closed my eyes, and listened to the sounds of suburbia. A distant lawnmower, the cheerful chirping of birds that hadn't yet been sighted for excessive noise, and the faint rhythmic thwump-thwump-thump of my next-door neighbor Gary, power-washing his immaculate driveway for the 3rd time that month. It was a symphony of glorious, boring peace. This was the life I'd worked for. The quiet, the space, the sheer novelty of being able to walk outside without having to put on shoes. I was a king on my patio, a benevolent ruler admiring his domain. From my vantage point, I could see the whole cul-de-sac. A perfect row of identical houses, distinguished only by the model of minivan in the driveway and the specific breed of fluffy dog being walked. It was a portrait of conformity, and for the moment, I was happy to be part of it. I'd even started to wave at people. Not the cool, city-slicker head nod, but a full-on, 5-fingered, wrist-swiveling suburban wave. I was assimilating. The thick welcome packet from the Homeowners Association sat on our kitchen counter, a dense brick of paper I had been successfully using as a coaster for the past 2 weeks. "How much trouble can we really get into?" I joked to Sarah as we unpacked. "It's not like we're planning to build a meth lab in the gazebo." Sarah, who has a 6th sense for this kind of thing, had just shaken her head. "Just don't let Brenda see you put the recycling bin out before 6 p.m. on Tuesday," she'd warned, her voice holding the gravity of someone defusing a bomb. Brenda, we had quickly learned, was the president of the HOA. She was the neighborhood's ever-present panopticon, a woman who moved with the silent, deadly grace of a Roomba, documenting every minor infraction from the cockpit of her electric golf cart. But I wasn't worried. I was a rule follower, an engineer. I appreciated order. And my new patio set, it was the epitome of good taste. A simple, elegant 4-piece ensemble in a sophisticated dark gray, with plush, comfortable cushions in a neutral beige. It was from one of those stores where everything smells faintly of potpourri and fiscal responsibility. It was understated. It was classy. It was, in my professional opinion, as a man who has spent thousands of hours optimizing the butt-to-seat interface, a damn fine piece of furniture. It was utterly, completely, unimpeachably inoffensive, or so I thought. As I sat there, sipping my coffee and feeling a profound sense of accomplishment, I was completely unaware that I wasn't just enjoying a beautiful morning. I was sitting on a declaration of war. My perfect wicker chair was not a throne. It was a ticking time bomb. The bomb detonated 2 days later. It didn't arrive with a bang, but with the quiet, sinister crinkle of expensive paper. I came home from a grocery run to find a crisp, cream-colored envelope taped to my front door. It wasn't tucked under the mat or slipped into the mailbox. It was taped, at eye level, with an aggressive amount of clear packing tape, as if to say, "You will not ignore me." The return address simply read, Serenity Meadows Architectural Review Committee. A title so pompous, so utterly self-important, that I genuinely thought it was a prank. Maybe one of the neighbors was welcoming me with some elaborate joke. I chuckled as I tore it open. The chuckle died in my throat. The letter was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive legalese, a document clearly drafted by someone who gets a thrill from citing bylaws. It read, Dear resident of 114 Willow Creek Lane, this letter serves as an official notice of violation of the Serenity Meadows Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CC and Rs. An inspection conducted on Monday, September 15th, has revealed an infraction pertaining to Article 7, Property Aesthetics and Maintenance. Specifically, Section B, Paragraph 4, Outdoor Furnishings. The recently installed patio set on the rear-facing property is in direct violation of the established community standards. The furniture is of a non-uniform aesthetic and fails to cohere with the community's pre-approved design palette. As per the CC and Rs, you have 7 days from the date of this notice to rectify this violation by removing the non-compliant items. A list of pre-approved outdoor furnishing models can be found in your homeowner's manual, Appendix C. Failure to comply will result in further action, including monetary fines. Sincerely, the Serenity Meadows Architectural Review Committee. I read it twice, then a third time, just to make sure I hadn't suffered a minor stroke. Non-uniform aesthetic? I muttered to the empty hallway. I walked into the kitchen where Sarah was unloading groceries. Hey, honey, I said, holding up the letter. Guess what? My chairs are criminals. She took the letter, her eyes scanning it quickly. A look of weary resignation settled on her face. Brenda, she said, her voice flat. This has Brenda's fingerprints all over it. Did you see her slowing down in her golf cart yesterday? She was looking at the backyard like it was the scene of a crime. It's insane, I said, my voice rising. A non-uniform aesthetic? What does that even mean? Does it clash with the color of the sky? Did my wicker offend the sensibilities of the neighborhood squirrels? And a pre-approved design palette? We're not painting a masterpiece here. We're putting chairs on a slab of concrete. Fueled by a fresh surge of indignation, I grabbed my keys. I'm going for a walk, I announced. I need to see this uniform aesthetic for myself. My tour of the neighborhood was a journey into the heart of suburban beigeness. Every single backyard I could see from the sidewalk, every patio, every deck, was adorned with the exact same set of outdoor furniture. It was a cheap-looking, black, cast aluminum set. The kind of set that looks flimsy and uncomfortable, with a faux antique finish that was already starting to peel on some of them. The chairs had a generic lattice pattern, and the tables had a hole in the middle for an umbrella that nobody seemed to own. It was the official patio set of giving up. My beautiful, comfortable, high-quality wicker set stood out like a Fabergé egg in a carton of cheap knockoffs. My crime wasn't bad taste. It was the audacity of having taste. I came back home fuming. Sarah was waiting for me with a glass of wine. So? She asked. So, we're living in a cult, I said, snatching the wine and downing half of it. And the Kool-Aid is black, powder-coated aluminum. I crumpled the letter into a tight ball. My first instinct was pure defiance. This was America, damn it. The land of the free and the home of the brave, and I would have whatever patio furniture I wanted. They can pry my comfortable, aesthetically pleasing wicker chair from my cold, dead hands. Sarah just patted my arm. Okay, Braveheart, Just remember the fines double every week." My cold, dead hands strategy lasted exactly 3 days. That's when Brenda made her move. I was getting the mail, still fantasizing about staging a dramatic Boston Tea Party-style protest with the offending black aluminum chairs, when her electric golf cart hummed to a stop on the sidewalk in front of my house. It moved with an unnerving silence, like a predator stalking its prey. Brenda disembarked. She was a woman in her late 50s, dressed in a crisp, pastel pink tracksuit that looked like it had never seen a bead of sweat. She wore a matching visor, and in her hand, she clutched a clipboard, the suburban scepter of power. She was ostensibly inspecting the petunias in the community flower bed, but her focus was entirely on me. "Leo, dear," she began, her voice a syrupy, sweet melody that didn't quite mask the steel beneath it. "I trust you received our little notice. We do try to keep things harmonious here in Serenity Meadows." I leaned against my mailbox, forcing a casual smile. "Oh, the letter about my fugitive chairs? Yeah, I got it. I've been meaning to call. I'm still trying to figure out what law they broke. Was it unlawful assembly? Or maybe conspiracy to be comfortable?" Her smile didn't waver, but it didn't reach her eyes either. They remained cold, calculating little pellets. "It's simply a matter of uniformity, Leo. A simple concept. It ensures a cohesive and pleasant visual experience for all residents. We wouldn't want the neighborhood to look cluttered." "Cluttered?" I repeated, gesturing vaguely towards my patio. "Brenda, it's 4 chairs and a table. It's not like I've installed a junkyard. It's a very nice set." "It's a non-compliant set," she corrected, tapping her clipboard with a perfectly manicured nail. The sound was like a tiny gavel. "The approved model, as you know, is on page 47 of your guidelines. It's quite lovely." "Right," I said, the sarcasm practically dripping from my words. "The one that looks like it was designed for a medieval torture chamber. The one that would give you tetanus just by looking at it. I'll consider my options." That's when the syrup in her voice evaporated, leaving only the hard, unyielding steel. Her smile vanished. "You should," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The first notice is a courtesy, a gentle reminder. The second comes with a $50 fine. It doubles every week thereafter. It can get quite unpleasant. We've had to put liens on homes before." She let that hang in the air for a moment, a casual threat wrapped in the guise of friendly advice. With a final, withering look at my house, she climbed back into her cart and hummed away, leaving me standing by the mailbox, my blood pressure skyrocketing. A lien over a chair. This wasn't about harmony or aesthetics anymore. This was a power trip. This was about control. And she had just pushed the wrong button on the wrong aerospace consultant. The war wasn't just on. It was about to go airborne. That weekend, I declared marital law. The living room became my war room. The coffee table was littered with schematics, not for airplanes, but for my counteroffensive. And at the center of it all was the weapon of my enemy, the Serenity Meadows covenants, conditions, and restrictions. All 200 pages of it. Sarah found me on Sunday morning, surrounded by papers, a half-empty pot of coffee at my side, muttering to myself like a mad scientist on the verge of a breakthrough. "Find a way to weaponize the petunias yet?" she asked, handing me a fresh mug. "Not yet," I grumbled, "but I'm getting close." Reading that document was a journey into a special kind of hell. It was a masterwork of bureaucratic pedantry. I discovered rules I never could have imagined. Rule 14. C. All garden hoses, when not in use, must be fully coiled on an approved caddy and must be of a forest green or dark brown hue. No vibrant or novelty colors permitted. Rule 21. A. Holiday decorations may not be erected more than 30 days prior to the federally recognized holiday and must be fully removed within 15 days post-holiday. Inflatable decorations are limited to one per household, and may not exceed 8 feet in height. I felt a sudden kinship with Gary and his power washer. He was probably just trying to blast the memory of reading this thing out of his brain. It was maddening. The book was so specific about everything. It dictated the exact shade of white for your window trim, the maximum height for a basketball hoop, and the minimum number of shrubs you had to plant in your front yard. It was a dictator's dream, a homeowner's nightmare. But as I got deeper, I started to notice something. The more trivial the rule, the more specific the language. The section on mailboxes, for instance, was 3 pages long and included diagrams. But the bigger, more subjective things, the language got sloppy. And then I found it. Article 7, Section B, Paragraph 4. The very rule I was accused of violating. I read it again and again. My heart started to beat faster. All outdoor furnishings, including but not limited to chairs, tables, and benches, must be maintained in good repair and present a clean, orderly appearance. Seating must be designed for outdoor use. All such furnishings must be uniform in appearance. There it was, the key, the beautiful, exploitable loophole. The word uniform. Uniform to what? The rule didn't say. It didn't specify that all furniture in the neighborhood had to be uniform to each other. It didn't say it had to be uniform to the pre-approved black aluminum set of sadness. It just said, uniform in appearance. An engineer's brain looks for precision, and this was as imprecise as it gets. It was a logical fallacy you could drive a truck through. A very large, very weird truck. My mind raced. What constituted uniform? Did it mean all my chairs had to be uniform to each other? A set of chairs is, by definition, uniform. But the way it was written was so deliciously ambiguous. That night, utterly defeated by legalese, I flopped onto the couch and put on a documentary. It was about the massive aircraft boneyards in the Arizona desert. The screen filled with haunting images of retired 747s and A320s, parked in endless rows under the blistering sun, waiting to be dismantled. The camera panned across a field filled with thousands of passenger seats, pulled from the fuselages and stacked in neat, colorful rows. Blue from Southwest, gray from American, red from Delta. I sat bolt upright. My eyes widened. A slow, mischievous, absolutely maniacal grin spread across my face. They were seats. They were designed to withstand incredible wear and tear. Spilled sodas, crying babies, decades of use at 30,000 feet. They were definitely kept in good repair. And a row of them, pulled from the same plane, would be perfectly uniform. I turned to Sarah, my eyes gleaming with the light of pure, unadulterated, petty genius. "Honey," I said, my voice trembling with excitement, "I have an idea, a terrible, wonderful, beautifully malicious idea." I laid out the plan. My voice was a torrent of vindictive glee as I explained the loophole, the ambiguity, the sheer poetic justice of it all. Sarah listened patiently, her expression shifting from mild concern to horrified fascination, and finally to something resembling profound admiration. "Think about it," I crowed, pacing the living room. "They're built to withstand decades of use, spills, and the existential dread that comes with turbulence over the Atlantic. They are the pinnacle of seating engineering. And the best part? The rulebook says nothing, absolutely nothing, about my backyard having to look like it belongs on the ground." Sarah was silent for a long moment. She took a sip of her tea. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "You're going to put airplane seats in the yard," she stated, as if confirming a cosmic truth. "I am Leo," she said, leaning forward, her eyes sparkling. "Oh my God, you have to get one of those first-class pods, the kind with the little walls and the TV." I pointed a triumphant finger at her. "I'm way ahead of you." The plan wasn't just a plan anymore. It was a mission. Operation Frequent Flyer was a go. My professional life had prepared me for this moment. For years, I had navigated the labyrinthine world of aviation suppliers, sourcing everything from galley carts to overhead bins. Now I turned those skills toward a much nobler cause, acquiring the most mismatched, obnoxious, yet technically compliant collection of outdoor seating the world had ever seen. My weekend was a deep dive into the weird, wild west of the internet, aviation surplus and salvage dealer websites. These weren't your slick, user-friendly Amazon pages. These were relics from the dial-up era, sites with blinking text, pixelated logos, and a general aesthetic that screamed, "built by someone's nephew in 1998. I scrolled through listings for landing gear, cockpit gauges, and emergency exit slides. And then I hit the jackpot, a category labeled Passenger Cabin and Furnishings. It was a glorious graveyard of commercial aviation. Rows of seats from defunct airlines, first-class thrones from the golden age of air travel, and endless economy-class benches that looked uncomfortable even in photographs. I found a dealer out of Mesa, Arizona, with a perfectly understated name, Jet Isund Treasures. Their tagline was, "We sell plane parts." I liked their style. I drew up a shopping list and made the call. A grizzled, gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "Sal's." "Hi," I said, trying to sound as normal as possible. "I'm looking to purchase some passenger seating." "What airline you with?" Sal grunted. "Oh no, it's not for an airline. It's for my yard." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could hear the faint hum of machinery, the distant clank of metal on metal, and what I could only assume was Sal's brain trying to process what I'd just said. Finally, he spoke. Your yard." "Yeah," I said, forging ahead. "For sitting, outside. Like a patio set, but, better." "A patio set," he repeated slowly, tasting the words. "Son, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've sold seats to guys building home movie theaters. I've sold them to crazy artists in New York who weld them into sculptures. I sold a whole damn cockpit to a fella in Texas who wanted to build the world's most expensive flight simulator for his kid. You," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief, "are the first yard guy." "Happy to be a pioneer," I said. "So, can you help me?" "What are you looking for?" he asked, a new note of professional curiosity in his voice. The absurdity had hooked him. "Variety," I said, pulling up my list. "I want it to look like the most chaotic airport gate in the world. Give me the weird stuff. You got one of those old-school, three-seater benches from a Delta 727? The ones with the fabric pattern that looks like a bus seat from the 80s. "Got a dozen of them." "Perfect. I'll take one. And how about a couple of those hard, plastic, non-reclining blue seats from an early Southwest 737? The ones designed to maximize passenger suffering." "Them's the ones," he chuckled. "Got plenty." "Excellent. Now for the centerpiece. Do you by any chance have a vintage single first-class seat? I'm talking Pan Am, TWA, something from the era when flying was glamorous. Big, wide, ridiculously plush." "Got a beauty," Sal said, his voice warming up. "Pulled it from a Pan Am 747. It's beige leather, weighs about 300 pounds, and reclines almost flat. Got a leg rest and everything." "I'll pay a premium for it," I said, my heart pounding. "It's for an art installation." "Kid?" Sal said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. I don't care if you're gonna strap 'em to rockets and shoot 'em at the moon. You pay the invoice, I'll ship 'em. Just do me a favor. Send me a picture when you're done. The next challenge was installation. These things couldn't just sit on the grass. They were heavy and top-heavy. They needed to be bolted to concrete platforms to be stable and to meet my self-imposed, kept-in-good repair standard. This was not a DIY job. I found a listing on a local classified site that looked promisingly sketchy. Manny and Gill's odd jobs and heavy lifting. Their motto was, "If it's weird, we'll do it." Perfect. Manny and Gill arrived the next day in a beat-up Ford F-150 that looked like it had survived a war. They were two large, burly men who looked like they could wrestle bears for a living. Manny was tall and wiry, with a thick mustache. Gill was shorter, built like a refrigerator, and completely bald. They surveyed my pristine lawn with the practiced eyes of men who had seen it all. I explained the project, pointing to the areas where I wanted the seating arrangements to go. They listened in silence, their expressions unreadable. When I was done, Manny stared at the empty lawn, then at me. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice a low rumble. "You want us to pour little concrete slabs, to bolt airplane chairs to—" "Weatherproof platforms, yes," I clarified, "for my new outdoor seating." Gill folded his massive arms across his chest. "Is this like a fetish thing?" he asked, not unkindly. "We don't judge, just costs extra." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "No, nothing like that," I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "It's an HOA thing." Recognition dawned on their faces simultaneously. It was like I'd said a magic password. They both nodded slowly, a shared look of profound understanding passing between them. "Oh," they said in unison. "Say no more," Manny said, a grin spreading across his face. "We had a lady last year. Her HOA said her fence was 2 inches too high. So we came back and planted a row of those fast-growing bamboo trees right behind it, blocked out the sun from her neighbor's entire yard. We get it." "Consider it a spite discount," Gill added, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to realign my spine. "We love these jobs." They quoted me a price that was shockingly reasonable. The mission was fully in motion. The payload was on its way, and my ground crew was ready for action. Delivery day arrived with all the subtlety of a 747 on final approach. A massive freight truck, the kind that usually delivers industrial equipment, wheezed its way down our quiet, tree-lined street. It stopped in front of my house, its air brakes hissing like an angry dragon, and the whole neighborhood seemed to pause. Curtains twitched. A man walking his golden retriever stopped dead in his tracks. This was an event. The driver, a cheerful guy named Stan, lowered the liftgate with a deafening hydraulic groan. And there they were, my glorious, mismatched implements of petty revenge. He wheeled them out one by one on a pallet jack, the blocky retro Delta triple-seater, the 2 slim utilitarian Southwest seats, their blue vinyl gleaming in the sun, a shockingly orange double-seater from an airline I didn't even recognize. EasyJet, according to the safety card still tucked in the seatback pocket. And finally, like a king being carried on a litter, the Pan Am first-class throne. It was magnificent. A behemoth of beige leather and polished chrome, wider than my front door. My driveway now looked like a luggage carousel after a particularly nasty baggage handler's strike. As Stan was getting my signature, Brenda's golf cart came gliding around the corner. She slowed to a near stop, her perfectly coiffed head swiveling to take in the scene. Her face was a perfect mask of confusion, a look I imagined a cat might have upon encountering a calculus equation. She didn't say a word, just stared, her mouth slightly agape, before silently humming away down the street. It was even better than I'd imagined. The next morning, Manny and Gil arrived, their truck rattling with bags of concrete mix, lumber, and tools. They were ready to work. They greeted me with the knowing smiles of co-conspirators. "Time to make the magic happen," Manny announced, slapping the Pan Am seat like it was an old friend. The day was a symphony of chaotic construction. Manny and Gil were true artisans of the odd job. They mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow with practiced efficiency, pouring perfectly level square platforms across my lawn. They didn't just work. They provided a running commentary that was worth the price of admission alone. "You know," Gil said, smoothing the concrete on a slab destined for the southwest seats, "this one here's from a Spirit Airlines plane. You can tell 'cause there ain't no padding and it's got a permanent aura of sadness. People who sat in this chair have seen things, man. I acted as the project foreman, the Orville Wright of my backyard project, directing the placement with meticulous care. This wasn't just about defiance, it was about performance art. I had them install the opulent first-class seat front and center, positioned for the best view of the sunset. Then, I had them place the 2 cramped economy seats directly behind it, creating the most inequitable seating arrangement in residential history. "Can you put them a little closer?" I asked Gil. "I want the person in the back to really feel the injustice of their situation. I want their knees to be able to touch the back of the first-class pod." "You got a dark side, buddy," Gil chuckled, nudging the platform an inch closer. "I like it." We arranged the others in a chaotic semicircle, facing different directions, as if a group of travelers had gotten into an argument and decided to give each other the silent treatment. The bright orange EasyJet seat was placed jarringly next to the muted corporate blue of the Delta bench. Manny, using a heavy-duty drill, bolted each seat securely to its newly cured concrete platform. The thwack, thwack, thwack of the impact driver echoed through the serene afternoon, a percussive announcement of my rebellion. My final touch was the pièce de résistance. I had purchased a small, solar-powered LED sign online. Manny, with a grin, mounted it on a metal post I had him sink into the ground near the first-class seat. With a flick of a switch, 2 words lit up in glowing red, "Fasten seatbelt." By late afternoon, the job was done. My pristine, boring lawn had been transformed. It was now home to the world's most exclusive and dysfunctional airport waiting lounge. It was hideous. It was magnificent. It was technically a collection of outdoor seating, kept in good repair, with each piece being uniform to its original set. I had followed the letter of the law while drop-kicking its spirit into the stratosphere. I paid Manny and Gil, adding a hefty tip. "Pleasure doing business with you, man," Manny said, shaking my hand. "You ever need a catapult installed to fling water balloons at your neighbor's house, you got our number? I'll keep that in mind," I said with a straight face. After they left, I went inside and grabbed a beer. I walked back out, past my lonely, exiled wicker set that was now huddled by the back door like a refugee. I walked to the center of my creation, lowered myself into the ridiculously comfortable Pan Am first-class seat, and kicked my feet up on the plush leg rest. I cracked open my beer, took a long, satisfying sip, and waited. The show was about to begin. The fallout was immediate and glorious. My backyard installation had the same effect on the neighborhood's delicate ecosystem as a meteorite hitting a duck pond. Within an hour, I had a visitor. It wasn't Brenda, as I'd expected, but my neighbor from 2 houses down, a retired airline pilot named Dave. He was a friendly, white-haired guy I'd only ever exchanged pleasantries with. He walked across his lawn to my fence line, his shoulders shaking. At first I thought he was crying. Then I realized he was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. "Son," he finally gasped, wiping a tear from his eye and pointing a trembling finger at the Delta bench. "That's a bulkhead row from a Boeing 737-200. I can tell by the seat pitch. I've spent 10,000 hours of my life staring at the back of that thing. This, he declared, his voice filled with genuine awe, is the most beautiful, inspired act of defiance I have ever witnessed. He saluted me. Captain Dave is officially on your side. I had found my first ally. Not all reactions were so positive. I saw Mrs. Henderson from across the street peeking through her blinds, her hand clutching her chest as if she'd just witnessed a public indecency. The power washing enthusiast, Gary, just stood on his driveway, hose in hand, staring in slack-jawed silence, his perfectly clean concrete forgotten. And then, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the main event arrived. Brenda's golf cart came whipping around the corner, moving far faster than its manufacturer probably intended. It screeched to a halt on the sidewalk, the tires chirping on the pavement. She didn't even bother getting out. She just sat there, clutching the steering wheel, her knuckles white. "What is that?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with pure, unadulterated rage. It was the cry of a zealot witnessing the desecration of a holy temple. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my beer from the comfort of my first-class throne. "My new outdoor seating, Brenda," I said calmly, projecting my voice across the lawn. "I believe you'll find it's fully compliant. It's uniform. Each unit is a chair designed for sitting, and per the rules, it's kept in good repair. I even polished the little ashtrays in the armrests, even though they don't work anymore, for authenticity." "This is a mockery," she sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at the fastened seatbelt sign, which was now glowing brightly in the dusk. "You are mocking the rules. These are airplane seats." "Astute observation," I called back cheerfully. "Show me the rule that says my chairs have to be terrestrial, Brenda. I read the book. It's not in there. I'll wait." Her face went through the 5 stages of suburban grief: confusion, denial, outrage, sputtering, and finally the summoning of a manager, which in this case was just her but louder. Realizing she had no immediate recourse, she slammed her foot on the accelerator and sped off, her golf cart leaving a faint trail of ozone and impotent fury in its wake. The next day, a new cream-colored envelope was taped to my door. This one had more tape than the first. It was practically laminated to the wood. The tone of this letter was no longer passive-aggressive, it was just aggressive. It cited a new, previously unmentioned bylaw, Article 11, Section D, about all property modifications needing to be in keeping with the traditional architectural and aesthetic character of the community. A fine of $100 was included. The escalation had been met with a counter-escalation. I smiled, took the letter down, and bought a cheap frame for it. It now hangs in my home office under a little plaque that reads, "For distinguished service in the field of pettiness." Brenda, it turned out, was not a fan of paper warfare. When she saw that her strongly worded letter and $100 fine had failed to make the airport lounge disappear, she escalated to DEFCON 1. She called the police. I was in my office, which overlooks the front yard, when the cruiser pulled up. It rolled to a stop with a quiet efficiency that was the polar opposite of Brenda's frantic golf cart arrival. 2 officers got out. One was older, with a weary, seen-it-all look and a name tag that read Miller. The other was younger, fitter, with a sharp haircut and a name tag that said Sanchez. I saw Brenda scuttling across her lawn to meet them, clipboard in hand, ready to present her case to a higher authority. I sighed, saved my work, and went to meet my fate. I opened the front door just as they were stepping onto my walkway. "Afternoon, officers," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Sir," Officer Miller said with a stoic nod. He had a magnificent mustache that seemed to absorb all emotion. "We received a call about—" A disturbance? He said the last word like a question, his eyes flicking past me toward the backyard, a hint of curiosity in them. A public nuisance, Brenda interjected, marching up behind them, and an unauthorized salvage yard. This man has turned his property into a commercial junkyard. Officer Miller turned his head slowly to look at her, then back at me. Sir, would you mind if we took a look at this salvage yard? Not at all, I said, leading them through the side gate. We rounded the corner of the house, and there it was, in all its chaotic glory. The afternoon sun glinted off the polished chrome of the Pan Am seat. The fastened seatbelt sign was off, conserving its solar power for the evening's performance. For a moment, both cops just stood there, taking it in. Officer Miller's mustache twitched, the only sign of his internal state. But Officer Sanchez, his professional demeanor cracked, his eyes widened, and a slow grin spread across his face. He pointed at my first-class seat. No way, he breathed, taking a step forward like he was approaching a holy relic. Is that a Collins Aerospace Diamond from a 787 Dreamliner? That's the international business class pod. He looked at me with a newfound respect. Dude, that's actually pretty sweet. Brenda looked aghast. It is not sweet, it is a violation. Officer Miller finally turned to me, his face a perfect mask of professional neutrality, but I could see the laughter dancing in his eyes. So, sir, what's the story here? I gave him the short version. The first letter, the non-uniform aesthetic, the loophole in the bylaws, the malicious compliance. I explained that every item was a chair, designed for sitting, and was securely installed. Miller listened patiently, nodding. When I was done, he turned to Brenda. Ma'am, he said, his voice calm and steady. I understand your frustration. I really do. But this is a civil matter. The items are on his private property, they aren't blocking any public access, and they don't appear to pose a public safety hazard. But it's an eyesore, Brenda insisted. It's lowering our property values. That may be, Miller conceded. But it's not a criminal offense. There's nothing illegal about having bad taste, ma'am. This is an HOA issue. You'll have to handle it through your own channels. Officer Sanchez was still admiring the seats. You even got the Southwest ones, he said to me with a chuckle. For when your mother-in-law visits, right? Something like that, I replied with a grin. Officer Miller put a hand on Brenda's shoulder. Our job here is done, ma'am. Have a nice day. As they walked back toward their cruiser, Officer Sanchez gave me a subtle thumbs up over his shoulder. I watched them drive away, leaving Brenda standing alone on the sidewalk, sputtering in the middle of a perfect, serene suburban afternoon. I had won the battle. But I knew the war was heading for its final, explosive climax. The battle may have been won in my backyard, but the war was about to go global, or at least viral on a hyper-local level. My ally, Captain Dave, had a son who was, as they say, extremely online. That evening, a picture of my yard, taken from Dave's second-story window for a perfect aerial view, appeared on the internet. It was posted to Reddit on a forum called R Malicious Compliance, a digital shrine to people who follow rules to the letter with deliciously chaotic results. The title of the post was perfect. HOA told my dad's neighbor his patio set wasn't uniform. He complied. It exploded. By the next morning, it was the top post on the entire site. The comment section was a torrent of praise, laughter, and shared stories of people's own HOA nightmares. This man is not the hero we deserve, but the hero we need, one comment read. I'd pay good money to see the HOA president's face, said another. My backyard had become a symbol of rebellion for frustrated homeowners everywhere. The story quickly jumped from Reddit to local news blogs, and by lunchtime, my phone was ringing. It was a reporter from the local TV station. A young, ambitious journalist named Jessica Chen wanted to do a story on me and my chairs. "Absolutely," I said. The news van, with its towering satellite antenna, was an even bigger spectacle than the freight truck. Jessica Chen was a consummate professional, but I could see her producer in the van, laughing into his headset as he looked at the camera feed. I agreed to an on-camera interview, standing proudly in front of my Pan Am throne. I had decided to play the role of the earnest, slightly baffled homeowner to its fullest extent. "So, Leo," Jessica began, holding the microphone up, "can you tell us what inspired this unique design choice?" I put on my most sincere face. "Well, Jessica, I'm just a homeowner trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. The HOA bylaws here in Serenity Meadows value uniformity, and I wanted to ensure my outdoor seating arrangement was as uniform as possible. After all, what's more uniform than an airline seat? Every seat has a tray table, a seat belt, and the capacity to disappoint you with its legroom. That's uniformity you can count on." "And the HOA's reaction?" she prompted. "They've been very communicative," I said with a deadpan expression. "Lots of letters. They seem very passionate about landscape aesthetics, which I can appreciate. I'm just doing my best to meet their high standards." The interview was a masterpiece of straight-faced absurdity. But the real television magic happened when Jessica went to get the other side of the story. She found Brenda watering her prize-winning, and I assume regulation-compliant, roses. The camera started rolling, and Brenda, seeing her chance to plead her case to the world, launched into a tirade. "This is not about chairs," she sputtered, her voice quivering with indignation. "This is about community standards. It is about protecting the sanctity of our bylaws and the property values for all the good people of this neighborhood. That man has made a mockery of everything we stand for. It is a junkyard. An aviation-themed junkyard." She came across exactly as I had hoped, a petty, power-tripping tyrant. The segment aired on the 6 o'clock news. My calm, reasonable explanation, followed by her unhinged rant, was a devastating 1-2 punch. The court of public opinion had a verdict, and it was a landslide. The news station's Facebook page was flooded with comments. #Team Airplane Guy started trending on Twitter locally. People I didn't even know were driving slowly down my street to catch a glimpse of the now famous Airline yard. Other residents of Serenity Meadows, who had previously lived in quiet fear of Brenda, were emboldened. I started getting anonymous notes in my mailbox. "Thank you for standing up to her," one read. Another just said, "You are a legend." The tide hadn't just turned. It was a tsunami, and it was about to crash down on the next HOA board meeting. The summons arrived via email, its subject line written in an ominous, all-caps font. "Emergency HOA board meeting, RE 114 Willow Creek Lane." The time was set for Thursday night at the community clubhouse. The drama had a date. On Thursday evening, the clubhouse, a building normally reserved for bleak potlucks and poorly attended yoga classes, was packed to the rafters. It seemed the entire neighborhood had turned out. My little protest had become the hottest ticket in town. There was a buzz in the air, a sense of anticipation you usually only find before a championship game or a season finale. Sarah squeezed my hand. "Ready to face the music?" she whispered. "I am the music," I whispered back. Brenda sat at the head of a long table with the 4 other board members. She looked grim and determined. The others, however, looked deeply uncomfortable. They were a motley crew. A meek accountant named Stan, a retired gym teacher, a woman who sold scented candles, and a real estate agent. They had clearly seen the news. They were avoiding Brenda's gaze, fidgeting with their papers. The meeting started with some mundane business, but no one was paying attention. The tension was thick. Finally, the main event. "Next on the agenda," Brenda announced, her voice tight, The ongoing property violations at 114 Willow Creek Lane. All eyes turned to me. Mr. Maxwell, Brenda said, do you have anything to say for yourself before the board votes on levying significant escalating fines and placing a lien against your property for non-compliance? I do, actually, I said, standing up. I walked to the front of the room with my laptop. If you don't mind, I've prepared a short presentation. A murmur went through the crowd. I connected my laptop to the projector. The first slide lit up the screen behind the board. It was a beautiful, high-resolution photo of my backyard. The title read, Project Frequent Flyer, a case study in compliance. For the next 10 minutes, I delivered the presentation of my life. I was calm, I was factual, and I was relentlessly sarcastic. Slide 2. The accusation. A screenshot of the first violation letter with the phrase non-uniform aesthetic circled in red. Slide 3. The bylaws. A direct quote from Article 7, Section B, Paragraph 4, with the word uniform highlighted. I broke it down like a legal scholar. As you can see, the term is not defined. It does not specify a baseline for uniformity. Slide 4. A gallery of compliance. A series of photos of my airline seats. The caption for the Pan Am seat read, Uniformly First Class. The caption for the Southwest seats read, Uniformly Uncomfortable. Slide 5. Public reaction. Screenshots of the Reddit post, the news articles, and a greatest hits collection of the supportive comments online. Slide 6. Precedent. I brought up 2 other minor disputes in the neighborhood that Brenda had lost, showing a pattern of overreach. The board members were squirming. The accountant, Stan, looked like he was about to be physically ill. The real estate agent was staring at the screenshots of negative press, likely calculating the damage to her commissions. When I finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a smattering of applause from the audience. Brenda was furious. This is an outrage. This is not a joke. We cannot let one person dismantle everything we've built. Before the board could respond, a voice boomed from the back of the room. It was Captain Dave. What you built is a dictatorship run on beige paint and passive aggression, Brenda, he yelled. This man did us all a favor. That broke the dam. Others started shouting their own grievances. About fines for garbage cans being out too long, about warnings for having the wrong kind of flowers. The meeting devolved into chaos. The real estate agent on the board, seeing her career flash before her eyes, finally banged her gavel. A motion is on the table, she said, her voice shaking. A motion to dismiss all fines and actions against 114 Willow Creek Lane, and to form a committee to clarify the vague language in the bylaws. I second it, the accountant Stan squeaked. All in favor? 4 hands went up. Brenda sat frozen, her hand remaining on the table. Motion passes 4-1, the agent declared, looking directly at Brenda. The room erupted in cheers. It was over. I had won. The story ends a week later. I'm sitting in my first-class lounge chair, my feet up on the ridiculously plush leg rest, enjoying the sunset with a cold beer. Sarah brings me another one, kissing me on the head. Captain Dave is over, sitting in one of the old Southwest seats, and we're laughing, swapping stories. The airline seats are still there. They're staying. They've become a local landmark, a monument to the time a quiet neighborhood decided it had had enough. I've received a few anonymous thank you notes from neighbors, and a bottle of wine was left on my doorstep. I take a sip of my beer and watch the sky change color. Serenity Meadows was finally living up to its name, but not in the way Brenda had envisioned. Sometimes, to find peace in suburbia, you have to create a little turbulence first. They wanted uniformity. I gave it to them. Next time, they should probably be more specific.